Asha Degree went missing from the home she shared with her parents and brother on the 14th of February 2000. She was just 9 years old. She disappeared under very strange circumstances which, even now, have baffled investigators. 20 years later, Asha's family still believe that their little girl is out there, except now she'd be 29 years old. If anyone listening has any information, I'll include the relevant contact details in the show notes. Hello everybody and welcome to episode 18 of the Student's Verdict podcast. Thank you for joining me on another true crime adventure. To all you new listeners, welcome. My name is Emily and I'm your host. If you haven't already, please go and listen to some of our earlier episodes. I've covered cases such as that of Harry Potter actor Rob Knox and the Toolbox Killers. Please follow me on Instagram at the Student Verdict Pod and on Twitter at Student Verdict. Please visit my Facebook page and Facebook group. All social media links are in the show notes for you to check out. As always, if you enjoy the show, please leave us a review. If you don't like us, then please keep your opinions to yourself. As always, resources used in this episode will be linked in the show notes. A quick reminder that the Student's Verdict has merchandise featuring the new logo. So if you're like me and never have enough jumpers, then please check it out. I'm actually wearing mine now. Obviously you can't see it, but it's very warm. That's all I can say. If you do buy anything, please tweet me a picture or tag me on Instagram or Facebook. The final thing to say is that the Student's Verdict is now on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show, we have tiers from £3 to £20 a month. You can find the link to our Patreon page in the show notes. Each tier comes with a variety of perks, so please check it out. Any support is hugely appreciated. With all of that said, let's jump into today's episode. Harold and Jaquilla Degree married on Valentine's Day in 1988. The following year, they had a son, O'Brien, and the year after that, they had a little girl, Asha, who was born on the 5th of August 1990. The Degree family lived in a rural area north of Shelby, North Carolina, on a road called Oakcrest Drive. Both Harold and Jaquilla worked nearby, and so the children often let themselves in the house after school. When Harold and Jaquilla got home, they would often find the children doing their homework. Asha was in the 4th grade at Falston Elementary School. The family's lives largely centered around 3 main things: family, church, and school. I think we can all agree this was a fairly run-of-the-mill kind of family. During the second week of February 2000, Asha was going into a 3-day weekend. Cleveland County schools were closed on Friday, 11th of February. Harold and Jaquilla still had work, and so Asha and O'Brien spent the day at their aunt's house. She lived in the same neighborhood as the Degrees. From there, they went to the youth basketball practices at their school. The following day, on Saturday, the 12th of February, Asha's basketball team had a game. She was described as a star point guard. However, during this particular game, she fouled out, and her team would end up losing their first game of the season, which really upset Asha. She even cried along with her teammates. Asha's parents recalled that she eventually seemed to get over the loss and went on to watch her brother's game, which began after hers. That brings us to Sunday, the 13th of February 2000. On this day, both Asha and O'Brien went from church to a relative's house, and then they returned home. At 8 p.m., both children went to bed in the room that they both shared. 1 hour later, there was a power cut in the neighborhood after a nearby car accident. At 12:30 a.m., the power came back on, and Harold went and checked on the children, who were both tucked up in their beds. At 2:30 a.m. on the 14th of February 2000, Harold checked on the children again before he went to bed. Both children were still sound asleep. Shortly after this, O'Brien, 10, reported hearing Asha's bed squeak. He assumed that Asha was just changing positions in her sleep. However, it's believed that around this time, Asha actually got out of bed and grabbed her book bag. She had previously packed this bag with several sets of clothes and personal items. And then the 9-year-old left the house. It's unclear where she was heading to. She was spotted by both a truck and a motorist between 3:45 and 4:15 a.m. She was seen walking south along Highway 18, just north of its junction with Highway 180. She was wearing a long-sleeved white t-shirt and white trousers. Both witnesses later reported the sighting to the authorities after a TV report following her disappearance. The motorist claimed to have tried to turn his car around because it struck him as particularly odd that such a small child would be wandering along by herself so early in the morning. He circled 3 times, but when he tried to approach the little girl, she ran into the woods by the roadside and disappeared. Jaquilla awoke at 5:45 a.m. on the 14th of February 2000 to get the children ready for school. This day was not only Valentine's Day, but also the Degrees' wedding anniversary. When she opened the door to the children's room to wake them before their 6:30 a.m. alarm, she found her son still tucked up in bed, but there was no sign of her daughter. Jaquilla didn't panic. She thought that Asha must be in the house somewhere. However, when she couldn't find Asha in the house or in the cars, she began to panic. When Jaquilla told her husband she couldn't find Asha, Harold suggested that she may have gone to his mother's house across the street. Unfortunately, this was not the case, as Jaquilla soon found out when she called to her mother-in-law's. Jaquilla later recalled, quote, "That's when I went into panic mode. I heard a car door. I put shoes on and ran outside." Jaquilla then called her own mother, who told her to call the police, which she did. Despite the extensive searches, only a mitten was found, which Jaquilla said did not belong to her daughter. All Asha's winter clothes were accounted for at the house. It wasn't long before the local media caught wind of Asha's disappearance, which caused the 2 witnesses to come forward. On the 15th of February, some sweet wrappers were found in a shed at a nearby business, which was situated along the highway near to where Asha had run into the woods. Along with the sweet wrappers, there were some other items, including a pencil, a marker, and a Mickey Mouse-shaped hair bow, which were later identified as belonging to Asha. This was the first trace of Asha that had been found. The following day, when searching Asha's room, Jaquilla realized that some of her daughter's favorite clothing was missing, including a pair of blue jeans with a red stripe. Over the next week, flyers were posted all over the area. 3,000 leads were investigated, which ranged from possible sightings to tips about abandoned houses and wells where Asha might have ended up. After 9,000 man-hours, the search was called off. County Sheriff Dan Crawford said that investigators never really had a good substantial lead. Despite this, he urged the media to keep sharing Asha's story. During a news conference on the 22nd of February, Sheriff Crawford told the media that he would be going long-term in his search for Asha. What he meant by this was that both the FBI and North Carolina's State Bureau of Investigation, or SBI, would be called in to help the search. Both organizations put Asha on their respective databases for missing children. Sheriff Crawford insisted that they were following every lead. After her daughter's disappearance, Jaquilla Degree searched her daughter's room to account for what was missing. To the authorities, it seemed as though Asha had planned to run away for several days before her disappearance. What's particularly strange about Asha's disappearance is that she was considered quite young for a runaway. Being just 9 years old, she was 3 years younger than the average age for a juvenile runaway. This is according to Ben Ermini of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Another odd thing that stood out to investigators was the absence of any stressors in Asha's life that might have driven her to run away from home. Sometimes children run away from home to escape school pressures or a dysfunctional family, but Asha did not experience either of these things. She was well liked by her teachers, had several good friends, and was friendly with numerous others, and was academically and athletically engaged. Despite this, the evidence still suggested that she did run away from home. One theory people have come up with for why Asha ran away is as follows. So it's said that Asha had recently read a book at school, The Whipping Boy, by Sid Fleischman. The book tells the story of two boys who ran away from home before eventually going back. It's theorized that Asha could have been attempting something similar, but possibly met misfortune on her way. Now, you might be thinking what I was thinking, which is that she might have got talking to someone online and left home to meet up with them and was then subsequently abducted. However, the Degrees were smart and were very worried about their children having access to the internet, so they didn't even have a computer in the family home. Jaquilla even told Jet in an interview from 2013, quote, "Every time you turned on the TV, there was some paedophile who had lured somebody's child away via the internet." Jaquilla said that Asha didn't mind not having a computer. She was quite shy and content and would stay within the limits her parents had set. 1 month after Asha's disappearance, her family were invited to the Montel Williams show to talk about their missing daughter. Both America's Most Wanted and the Oprah Winfrey Show also devoted airtime to the missing 9-year-old. It wasn't until the 3rd of August 2001 that there was a significant development in the case. It was on this day, 30 miles north of the last sighting of Asha at a construction site along the Highway 18 near the town of Morganton, that Asha's book bag and some other items were found buried and wrapped in a plastic bag. The worker who found the bag knew it belonged to Asha Degree as it had her name and phone number inside it. Morganton is approximately 40 miles north of Shelby, and based on my research using Google Maps, the two towns are indeed connected via Highway 18. When this book bag was found, resources confirmed that the FBI conducted forensic analysis on the items, but they did not share the results with the public. I'm sad to say that these items were the last pieces of evidence to be found in Asha's case. Later, the FBI confirmed that the book bag contained a copy of Dr. Seuss's, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, McGillicuddy's Pool? Let's just pretend that was right. And a t-shirt featuring the band New Kids on the Block. What's strange is that neither of these items actually belonged to Asha. Inquiries concluded that the book was from the library at Asha's school. Detective Adams said, quote, "Apparently she packed her bag prior to leaving, but the contents, from what we can tell, look like something a child would pack rather than her parents preparing her for an overnight stay." The Degrees were briefly suspects in this case, but they were ruled out as suspects after they undertook polygraph tests, and all of them passed without incident. In 2004, authorities received a tip reportedly from an inmate at the county jail, telling them to look at the intersection in Lawndale. However, the bones turned out to be animal bones. In 2008, the Degrees established a scholarship in Asha's name for a deserving local student who has proven themselves to have promise and determination. The family also hosts an annual walk to raise awareness and to fund their search. The walk starts at the Degrees' home and ends at the missing persons billboard for Asha along Highway 18, where the little girl was last seen. Jaquilla Degree said in a 2013 Jet interview that she felt her daughter's disappearance had not gotten as much media attention over the years as some subsequent cases of missing children. She believed that this was because her daughter was black. Quote, "Missing white children get more attention. I don't understand why. I know if you ask them, they will say it's not racial. Oh, really? I'm not going to argue because I have common sense." end quote. Pictures of Asha, both real and the age progression pictures showing what she might look like now, decorate the Degrees' home. Jaquilla says that she still expects her little girl to walk through the door. In February 2015, the FBI announced that the authorities would be re-examining the case, which included re-interviewing the witnesses. They also put up a reward of $25,000 for any information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for Asha's disappearance. The community rallied together and added an additional $20,000 to the reward money. In May 2016, there was a possible new lead. It was said that Asha may have been seen getting into a dark green, early 1970s Lincoln Continental Mark IV, or possibly a Ford Thunderbird from the same era, along Route 18, near where she was last seen that night. The car reportedly had rust around the wheel wells. In September 2017, the FBI announced that its child abduction rapid deployment team was in Cleveland County to assist in the investigation and, quote, provide on-the-ground investigative, technical, behavioral analysis, and analytical support to find out more about what happened to Asha. All agencies worked together for 10 days. These agencies also meet several times a month to go over the latest on the investigation. Local agents and investigators have conducted approximately 300 interviews in relation to Asha's disappearance. In October 2018, the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office appealed for information about the book bag, the book, and the Kids on the Block t-shirt. According to an article by the Shelby Star on the 16th of November, which was kindly sent to me by @ShamelessPromo, thank you so much, a prison inmate, Marcus Mellon, wrote to the Star claiming to know what happened to Asha Degree. He wrote to the editor to say that Asha was deceased. He also claimed to know how and where to find her body. It should be noted that Marcus Mellon was originally sentenced to 14 years in 2014 for sexual offences against children in Cleveland County. But back to his letter, he requested that investigators come and see him in prison to find out what happened, writing, quote, Asha Degree has been missing for over 20 years. About 4 months ago, I had found out her whereabouts and what had happened to her. She was killed and then took and buried. I do know how and what town she is in. I hope you get this letter and do come see me. It's on the up and up. End quote. Cleveland County Sheriff Alan Norman said the tip would be followed, but that it might be a slow process. Unfortunately, this is largely because of COVID-19. Mellon is housed at Alexandra Correctional Institute, where there is currently an outbreak of COVID. Sheriff Norman confirmed that they will interview Mellon once the virus is under control in the prison, saying, quote, we treat every piece of information that we receive as good information until we prove otherwise. Here's a quote from Jaquilla Degree. After 20 years, I still believe my daughter is alive. I do not believe she is dead. And I know someone knows something. I'm not crazy enough to think that a 9-year-old can disappear into thin air without someone knowing something. The case remains an open investigation. Sheriff Norman pleaded, quote, if anyone knows anything whatsoever that they think is insignificant, it may be the piece of the puzzle to bring Asha home and bring closure to the family. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Asha Degree, I've put the relevant contact details in the show notes. I'd like to end with a quote from Asha's parents. That's my prayer every night, that God will get into their heart and let them come forward, because it's got to be a weight on them. We're hoping and we're praying that she'd had a halfway decent life, even though we didn't get to raise her. She was 9 years old, and she'll be 30 this year. So we've missed everything. But I don't care. If she walked in the door right now, I wouldn't care what I missed. All I wanted to do is see her. And that's the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. The Student's Verdict is a bi-weekly podcast, so follow us on social media to hear about our next episode. The Student's Verdict can be found anywhere you listen to podcasts, including Spreaker, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. See you on the next one, and remember to keep living the dream.